The story opens on a gray, overcast morning at Arlington National Cemetery, setting a somber and dignified mood. Rows of military officers, veterans, and grieving civilians gather beneath the fluttering American flags to honor the late General Marcus Cole, a highly decorated African-American military hero who served 5 tours overseas and received national recognition for his leadership and bravery. The funeral is not just a ceremony. It is a symbol of national pride, unity, and reflection. Attendees include high-ranking generals, state officials, and ordinary citizens whose lives were impacted by General Cole's decades of service. Among them is his widow, Marla Cole, and their teenage son, Jaden, both struggling to maintain composure during the emotional proceedings. As the service begins, military guards in full ceremonial uniform carry the flag-draped casket with precise, reverent steps. A military band plays a slow, mournful rendition of Taps as Marla Cole delivers a heartfelt eulogy, describing her husband not just as a soldier, but as a father, husband, mentor, and patriot who believed in a better America. Her words stir the crowd, many of whom wipe tears from their eyes. Meanwhile, General Alan Shepard, one of General Cole's closest friends and the highest-ranking black officer currently in active duty, is seen making his way through traffic toward the cemetery. He had just landed from an overseas mission, cutting his trip short to attend the funeral and honor his fallen friend. On the perimeter of the ceremony, Officer Derek Vaughn, a white police officer assigned to security detail, watches the proceedings with a cold, unreadable expression. His presence doesn't raise concern at first, but subtle signs of unease begin to surface. He appears less focused on crowd safety and more on watching certain individuals, particularly black mourners in military uniform. He radios his partner with vague comments about potential threats and unidentified individuals, despite the event being tightly secured by both military police and local law enforcement. His partner, Officer Linda Chavez, brushes off the remarks, assuming he's just being overly cautious, though she raises an eyebrow at his tone. The scene quietly builds tension. Vaughn's body language tight grip on his holster, narrowed eyes, constant scanning betrays something more than professional vigilance. It's clear he feels out of place or hostile in an environment honoring a black military figure with such reverence. To him, this funeral is not a patriotic event. It's a disruption of an order he's internalized. Back at the podium, General Cole's commanding officer begins recounting Cole's military accomplishments, rescuing his platoon under enemy fire, diffusing a political hostage crisis overseas, and implementing reforms that improved military morale. The crowd applauds solemnly. Just as the 21-gun salute begins, Officer Vaughn stiffens. From his post, he sees General Alan Shepard arrive, late and walking briskly toward the restricted funeral area. Vaughn's gaze hardens. In his mind, Shepard doesn't look like a general. He places his hand on his sidearm. This subtle buildup of tension sets the stage for the shocking confrontation to come. The peaceful ceremony honoring a war hero is about to be shattered not by a foreign threat, but by a man sworn to protect it. The foundations of justice, service, and identity all quietly collide in this moment, setting the narrative on a dangerous course. The funeral begins as a tribute to unity and sacrifice, but will soon become a flashpoint that forces the nation to confront its deepest contradictions. As the funeral continues with full military honors, the calm, respectful atmosphere is pierced by a growing undercurrent of unease that centers on Officer Derek Vaughn. Meanwhile, General Alan Shepard, a decorated 4-star general and longtime friend of the late General Marcus Cole, finally arrives at the cemetery's outer gate. Having just returned from an emergency overseas mission, he's wearing his formal uniform, adorned with numerous medals and insignia. He walks quickly, head high, determined to honor his fallen friend Dot at the checkpoint. Vaughn immediately steps in to stop Shepard. "Hold it right there," Vaughn snaps, blocking Shepard with his arm. Shepard, taken aback, calmly replies, "I'm General Alan Shepard. I'm here to attend General Cole's funeral." Vaughn gives him a once over his eyes, not registering the uniform or the name, but instead locking on Shepard's skin color. "ID," he barks, a tone that implies suspicion rather than routine procedure. Shepard raises an eyebrow. "You can see my rank. That should be enough." Vaughn refuses to budge. His voice becomes more aggressive. "You could have stolen that uniform for all I know. I need to see ID, now." Shepard maintains his composure, knowing full well the weight his position carries. He calmly presents his military ID and even shows his personal invitation to the funeral. But Vaughn isn't interested. He continues to question Shepard's authenticity, suggesting that the ID could be fake. His demeanor isn't just skeptical, it's hostile. Other officers nearby begin to notice the escalating exchange. Officer Linda Chavez, Vaughn's partner, walks over and immediately recognizes General Shepard. She tries to defuse the situation, whispering to Vaughn that everything checks out. But Vaughn refuses to listen. He waves her off and becomes even more confrontational, accusing Shepard of being a threat and disrupting an active security perimeter. As Shepard tries to calmly step forward, indicating that the funeral is nearly over, Vaughn suddenly pulls his gun. "Step back," he yells, aiming the weapon directly at General Shepard's chest. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Several attendees near the gate scream and back away. A few start recording on their phones. The peaceful ceremony is instantly shattered by the sight of a police officer pointing a loaded weapon at a 4-star General 1 who is in full uniform, unarmed, and simply trying to honor a fallen brother in arms. Shepard doesn't flinch. His voice, though firm, remains measured. "You're making a grave mistake, officer." Vaughn's hand shakes slightly, but he keeps his finger near the trigger, yelling about how Shepard is refusing lawful orders and could be a serious threat. Chavez pleads with him to lower the weapon, pointing to the badge, the ID, and the overwhelming evidence that Shepard is exactly who he says he is. More officers rush toward the scene, demanding Vaughn to stand down. The funerals. Quiet dignity has devolved into chaos. Civilians cry out. Military officers step between Vaughn and Shepard to protect their general. And through it all, Shepard stands tall, a picture of control and honor, even with a gun pointed at his heart. The confrontation doesn't end with a shot, but the damage is done. This incident, sparked by prejudice and fueled by abuse of authority, becomes the turning point that will ignite national outrage and lead to a trial watched by millions. The confrontation between Officer Derek Vaughn and General Alan Shepard spreads like wildfire. Within hours, cell phone footage captured by mourners at the funeral is uploaded to social media. The videos show every damning second. Vaughn pointing a loaded gun at an unarmed, uniformed 4-star general, ignoring pleas from fellow officers and bystanders. The image of a white cop threatening a black military hero at a state funeral becomes a symbol of everything broken in the justice system. National outrage is immediate and overwhelming. News networks interrupt regular programming to cover the story. Civil rights leaders call press conferences demanding justice. Veterans organizations and active duty soldiers condemn the incident, stating it is a disgrace to the uniform and a violation of everything the military stands for. Military leaders issue strong statements supporting General Shepard and denouncing the aggression shown by a civilian officer toward one of the nation's most senior military officials. General Shepard, in the aftermath, maintains his usual poise. He appears before cameras with calm strength, stating, "I faced enemy fire overseas, but never did I imagine I'd face a loaded weapon from someone sworn to protect our own citizens on American soil at a funeral for a fellow soldier." Public pressure mounts quickly. Demonstrations erupt in major cities, with protesters carrying signs that read "Justice for Shepherd," "Soldiers deserve respect," and "Racism wears a badge." Politicians from both parties are forced to respond, many calling for investigations into police culture and misconduct. Vaughn, meanwhile, is placed on administrative leave, an action that sparks even more public anger. Calls for his arrest grow louder by the hour. Reporters uncover his record, a disturbing pattern of racial profiling, excessive force complaints, and disciplinary reviews that were quietly buried or dismissed. Civilian oversight boards had flagged him multiple times, but no meaningful consequences ever followed until now. After 3 days of mounting protests and media scrutiny, the district attorney holds a press conference. Vaughn is charged with multiple offenses, including aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, misconduct in office, and a federal hate crime. Under the Violent Interference with Federally Protected Rights Act, Vaughn is arrested in a highly publicized takedown, escorted from his home in handcuffs by internal affairs officers. The moment is broadcast live as protesters cheer outside the courthouse and social media explodes with reactions. Some call it long overdue. Others say it's a symbolic first step in addressing deeper systemic problems. In jail, Vaughn remains defiant. His legal team prepares to argue self-defense, claiming he didn't recognize Shepherd and acted out of legitimate fear. However, experts point out that Shepherd's uniform and ID were clearly visible and that Vaughn ignored warnings from his own colleagues. The story becomes more than just about a single cop's actions. It becomes a national conversation about power, race, accountability, and the treatment of even the most decorated Black Americans. How could someone who served his country for over 30 years be treated like a criminal during a funeral, no less? This chapter ends with the stage set for a historic trial. The public wants more than punishment. They want change. And the nation braces to see if the justice system will finally deliver. The trial of Officer Derek Vaughn becomes a national spectacle, drawing widespread media coverage and public interest. Courtrooms overflow with reporters, legal experts, and everyday citizens who view the case as a historic test of justice, accountability, and racial bias in law enforcement. The prosecution builds its case methodically and powerfully. Led by District Attorney Carla Nguyen, the team focuses on Vaughn's clear abuse of power, arguing that he posed a lethal threat to an innocent man purely because of implicit bias and racial prejudice. Prosecutors replay the now infamous video. In court, Officer Vaughn, armed and aggressive, confronting an unarmed, uniformed black general during a military funeral. The video alone, Nguyen argues, tells a damning story, but it's only the beginning. They present Vaughn's personnel file, showing years of complaints against him, many from Black and Latino civilians, for excessive force, intimidation, and racial profiling. Internal reports are unearthed showing that multiple warnings had been issued, but he was never suspended or properly disciplined. A former police supervisor testifies, reluctantly admitting that Vaughn was known to overreact, especially when dealing with Black individuals. A forensic psychologist takes the stand to describe Vaughn's behavior as consistent with escalatory aggression and possible racially motivated fear conditioning, a psychological pattern where an officer wrongly perceives people of color as more threatening. But the most impactful moment comes when General Alan Shepard takes the stand. Wearing his formal uniform and sitting upright with military discipline, Shepard delivers a calm, precise account of the events. He speaks without bitterness but with uncheckable clarity. I was not a threat. I made no sudden moves. I showed my ID, my rank, and my purpose. Officer Vaughn didn't see a general. He saw a target. The courtroom hangs on every word. Shepard's testimony isn't just a recounting of events. It's a moral indictment of how race can distort perception, even in institutions meant to protect all Americans. The defense attempts to mount a counter-argument. Vaughn's attorney claims he was following protocol, that he feared a potential threat, and didn't recognize Shepard's rank due to his emotional state. They argue that Vaughn had no time to confirm credentials and had to make a split-second decision. But this reasoning crumbles under scrutiny. Under cross-examination, Vaughn's credibility unravels. He's forced to admit that he ignored Officer Chavez's confirmation of Shepard's identity. He also struggles to explain why he felt so threatened by a man in full military uniform carrying no weapon. The prosecution delivers a final blow with expert testimony showing that no other officer at the funeral felt endangered, and that Vaughn's actions were uniquely aggressive and unjustifiable. The jury, diverse and attentive, listens closely to every argument, but the sentiment in the room is clear. This wasn't a mistake. It was a reflection of bias, authority gone unchecked, and the danger that comes when accountability is absent. The trial closes with District Attorney Nguyen stating, "We are not here to punish a man for one bad day. We are here to hold him accountable for a lifetime of bad choices that finally caught up with him at the expense of a national hero." As the jury prepares to deliberate, the country holds its breath. The outcome of this case, many believe, will signal whether America is ready to confront the reality of racism within its justice system or continue to deny it. The verdict arrives after 2 days of tense jury deliberation. Outside the courthouse, a massive crowd gathers, some holding American flags, others carrying signs reading, "Justice for Shepard and protect those who protect us." Media outlets broadcast live as the jury files into the courtroom. The foreperson stands and delivers the unanimous decision. Guilty on all counts: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, official misconduct, and violation of federally protected rights. Under hate crime statutes, the courtroom erupts in emotion. General Shepard nods quietly, his face a mask of composure. Marla Cole, the widow of General Marcus Cole, weeps silently in the gallery. Prosecutors embrace with relief, while Vaughn stares forward in disbelief, the weight of the conviction beginning to register. In the sentencing phase, both sides make final statements. Vaughn's defense pleads for leniency, portraying him as a man who made a tragic mistake under pressure. They claim he has suffered enough through public humiliation and the destruction of his career, but the prosecution counters powerfully. District Attorney Carla Nguyen calls Vaughn a symbol of everything wrong with unchecked power and racial profiling. She reminds the court that this was not a one-time lapse in judgment. Vaughn's record showed a pattern of targeting minorities and using force where it wasn't warranted. She closes with a haunting line. If a 4-star general in full uniform can't be safe from a gun aimed by a man sworn to protect him, then who is? The judge, Honorable Marcus Redford, delivers a blistering statement before announcing the sentence. He condemns Vaughn's actions not only as criminal, but as a betrayal of the public trust and a stain on the ideals of equality and justice. Citing the seriousness of the offense, the abuse of authority, and the lasting trauma caused to the community and the military, he pronounces the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. For many watching, this is a landmark moment, a rare and forceful example of the justice system holding law enforcement fully accountable. Vaughn is handcuffed and escorted from the courtroom as the crowd outside erupts in cheers, chance, and emotional. Embraces. Reactions pour in from across the country. The president releases a statement honoring General Shepard and praising the court's decision as a reminder that no one is above the law. Civil rights groups hail the verdict as a breakthrough moment. Veterans organizations issue statements, affirming that respect for those who serve must never be compromised, especially by those tasked with enforcing the law. But the moment is not without backlash. Police unions express concern about demonizing officers, while some conservative commentators question the severity of the sentence. Still, the overwhelming public response favors the outcome as just and necessary. General Shepard holds a press conference outside the courthouse. He speaks briefly, acknowledging the pain of the past weeks, but reaffirming his belief in justice. "This isn't just about me," he says. "It's about accountability. It's about honoring Marcus Cole. It's about making sure that the next generation can wear the uniform without fear." The sentencing doesn't undo the damage, but it delivers a message. The badge is not a shield from justice, and honor must be defended. Even in the face of institutional failure, the conviction and life sentence of Officer Derek Vaughn sends shockwaves across the nation, but its most profound impact unfolds in the weeks and months that follow, as the country begins to reflect on what the case truly exposed. This was never just about one rogue officer pointing a gun. It became a turning point in the national reckoning on race, power, and accountability. Immediately after the trial, a series of reforms are launched. Lawmakers, sensing the public pressure, fast-track police oversight legislation. The Shepard Act, named after General Alan Shepard, passes through Congress with bipartisan support. It mandates federal-level investigations into use-of-force incidents involving uniformed military personnel and introduces stricter accountability protocols for officers with histories of misconduct. It also includes funding for implicit bias, training and early warning systems in police departments to flag repeated complaints. In cities across America, civilians begin attending local police board meetings in record numbers. Community activists who had long been ignored are suddenly invited into city halls, helping reshape policy. Internal affairs departments, often viewed as rubber stamps, come under reform, with some oversight boards becoming civilian-led with independent investigative powers. The military community also responds. For decades, many black service members quietly endured discrimination both inside and outside the armed forces. Now, encouraged by General Shepard's calm but forceful stand, they begin to speak up. New channels are created for reporting racial, profiling incidents involving veterans and active duty personnel. The military strengthens its outreach to police departments to educate officers on recognizing service insignia and respecting protocols for military funerals. Meanwhile, General Alan Shepard is transformed into a national figure not by choice, but by necessity. In the months following the verdict, he tours the country, speaking at universities, town halls, and military bases about the importance of honor, accountability, and civil rights. Shepard doesn't dwell on anger. Instead, he speaks with quiet resolve, urging unity through truth. His speeches are shared widely online, and he is awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his courage and composure during the crisis. The Cole family, too, finds a measure of peace. Marla Cole establishes the Marcus Cole Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting the families of veterans impacted by racial violence or abuse of authority. The foundation also funds scholarships for young people entering public service with a commitment to justice and equity. As for Vaughn, his story fades from the headlines, but legal scholars and historians continue to study the case. It becomes a staple in law schools and police academies, a cautionary tale of what happens when bias and power go unchecked. His name becomes synonymous with betrayal of duty. Culturally, the case leaves a lasting legacy. Films, documentaries, and books begin to chronicle the events from the funeral standoff to the dramatic trial. Artists and musicians respond with tributes, and the phrase, "He didn't see a general, he saw a target," becomes a rallying cry for justice reform. In the end, the tragedy of that day at the cemetery catalyzed real, lasting change. The nation was forced to ask hard questions, and for once, it answered them with action. The legacy of General Marcus Cole, upheld by the bravery of General Shepard, lives on not just in memory, but in the laws, reforms, and renewed hope they inspired.